All right. Hey, everybody. Well, this is Jared Malott, and I'm here with my good friend.
Mateo Galis.
And this is the Coltist, episode 28, aka, well, it's a Jonathan
Yeah,
Taylor
who
show
else?
right now,
Yeah,
uh, aka the Marshall Falk. I think we talked about who else do we say who wore 28?
Greg Toller.
Rick Toller.
Yeah, and then no one. Do you remember Toller? He was a cornerback that played like alongside Vontae Davis in like
Hmm.
the peak Chuck Pagano era. He got burned several times.
Hmm.
He was not a good cornerback. So yeah, basically it's Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. So it's the Jonathan Taylor episode here, the Cultist, episode 28. And we are now, I think, in the afterglow of the 2022 NFL draft, which for the Colts, not having a first round draft pick, went off about as well as could have been expected.
Yeah,
The gist to pass along for those that don't have the time to invest in the Colts video series on YouTube that they've posted, which has been awesome. It's way farther inside the business than I thought it would be.
yeah,
I expected more corporate speak and less of it being like, nope, that's actually the war room. Nope, they're actually in there talking about the conversations they're having. Um, One of the things I saw Chris Ballard say in a podcast, he was on Colin Cowherd's podcast,
yeah,
and he said that they went through those scenarios in those spots with those players available. And so it's almost like they knew they were going to be able to trade back and then still get the same players that they were initially targeting with their second round pick
yeah,
before they traded back. So kind of in the aftermath of the draft, when you find out that, and if you think about what you want to get out of a draft, when you are able to trade back, trade up, and then end essentially the second day of the draft with everything that you needed. Anything you got after that is just kind of icing on the cake from there. And then ultimately, we expect, like we were kind of chatting about it today amongst the Stampede Blue staff here on our new Discord, which, by the way, I like a lot better than Slack. I gotta say it.
yeah. I don't know. I find it hard to like keep track of everything we are discussing there. I thought Slack was a bit easier, but
Easier.
hey, that's just me.
I do like being able to follow all the different like media and get that as an update in its own thing and it not affect our conversation. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like
Nah, yeah, that's better.
being able to keep up with current events and then also have a conversation with my colleagues. You know what I mean? I appreciate it. But hell, I appreciate it just about any form of human communication at this point, right? So um Colts have a hell of a draft class. um I noticed I saw Dallas Clark was running in a half marathon and raised like $2 million. And that was a big thing over the weekend. I think it was a half marathon. It was Ironman. He competed in Ironman and he raised $2 million.
Yeah.
Like that was awesome to see over the weekend. Um, I guess part of what we've been talking about on the podcast this summer is I've lost I'm right about 250. Um, Still down about 70 pounds. Um, I'm getting into the phase where I can work out and run every day now without expecting to get injured. So that's like a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Uh, the
Yeah,
week of the
definitely.
season starts. So I'm not injured and I'm in good enough shape where I could run some mileage and also lift in the same day and not die.
Yeah.
So that feels pretty good. Um, the I haven't been at the last couple practices. Had a couple calls go late 2 weeks in a row. Really, at work, it was bad. I was on the phone till like 6 o'clock. Practice starts at like 6, right? And I'm an hour away. Ain't making
Yeah, so
that.
yeah.
Um, Long story short, the team travels a lot early in the season, and guys that aren't expected to start frequently aren't making that road trip. So, as it kind of turns out, even though I kind of haven't been there, like it's not a guarantee that we'll have a backup quarterback, right? Which was kind of what we knew last year when I was coaching was that, man, I got to keep this quarterback upright. If I don't have a backup. We're running Wildcat because we're
Yeah.
not throwing if it's not him because he was the only trained eye we had. That said, though, um, but like I said, I've just managed to keep myself healthy. And then, like I said, I have the tape to kind of back up, feeling pretty comfortable should my name get called. We'll kind of see what happens. So that we have our first road trip. We're playing in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is, I'm going to call it a 2-hour road trip. And that's if there's no traffic backup
Yeah.
next Saturday. And then I think we play back-to-back games on the road, but not weeks. So I think it goes, we play a road game and then we don't have a game the next weekend and then we play again. Does that make sense? So it's like on,
Yeah.
off, on for our
Yeah.
first 3 weeks of the season. It's like getting a bye week too, in a 10, otherwise 10-game season. And so, like I said, not much else to report there, but I have accepted an invitation to Soldiers to Sidelines coaching certification course for football for 2022. I'm kind of getting to know the other participants. Obviously, they're going to be veterans, ranging from Division 1 and 2 football down to having no experience at all, like fresh out of the military, just trying to get into coaching, whatever. I have that certification course the last week of May, and then basically I found out, and this I'll have to make sure is accurate, but I found out recently that they've raised the pay considerably for teachers. They're having a problem filling teaching holes in the United States. And so I want to talk about this on my podcast because I want it to be something that people come back to and they say, remember when you was talking about this shit a long time ago? And maybe you can halfway across the world, brother, you could probably agree. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm going to presume this is correct and hope that I'm incorrect and that you correct me and tell me, no, that's not how it is here.
Okay.
My whole life, I had teachers that hated their job. Every single teacher I ever had, no matter if they were good at their job or bad, there's a difference between being good at your job and liking it. Right.
Yeah.
And my whole life, obviously, and this is kind of like beating a dead horse in the United States anyway, where teachers work a lot and, they work a lot. They work an 8-hour shift 5 days a week and they don't even work the whole year round. Sorry, but routinely make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and they really only work like 9 months out of the year. So it's really difficult for me, having worked, all but 3 days in the last year and we'll make like $75K, to really be like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And then the big problem is they have problems at lots of schools. And this is things I hear. And I, for a job, I talk to retirees, right? So old teachers, coaches, and these are the people that I'm having regular conversations with all day nationwide, right? Where teachers are quitting, they're losing coaches too. They're having to overcompensate the incoming teachers who really, and then now I'm hearing they've waived student teaching in some states. And so I've kind of figured out like there are going to be a lot of people that shouldn't be teachers that are going to go become teachers. A lot of people that shouldn't be coaches that are going to go become coaches. And so I'm kind of biting the bullet again, right? It's just like losing 100 pounds, joining the Marine Corps. I'm biting the bullet and I'm probably not very far away from an education degree. And I need to get kind of started on my master's anyway. And it's kind of a good way to do it is like go back to Purdue. Not only is that my alma mater, but like I have a little GI Bill left from when I used my GI Bill the first time. I didn't even use all of it. I got a degree since I came home, so I have more credit hours to add. And I can't imagine it's a year, maybe 18 months, and you can go spring and summer semester too. So I could get it done real quick. And I want to get started on a master's in data analysis, but I got in contact with the senior director of admissions. He's on vacation right now. Hopefully I'll talk to him this upcoming week to go back to Purdue to again, like get an education degree with the intent of going back to being a high school coach. And the idea is, I talked to my wife about it too, like we have to put the house up for sale and move, let's do it. But I don't want to be an athletic director. I want to be the head football coach, but I'm interested in coaching like track and wrestling and getting into your conditioning programs and like trying to trying to do it the right way, because I know a lot of people don't do it the right way. I know for a fact that there were programs when I was in high school that were definitely cheating. Definitely,
Yeah,
they're giving those kids steroids. Like, what are we talking about? Or shit they shouldn't be taking, really, is what I probably should be saying there. Um, I remember specifically there were things at GNC that you had to be 18 to buy and that you're supposed to be 18 to take. And guys I played sports with and against regularly use that shit. And you're not 18 years old. You're not supposed to be on that, right? So for the record, that's why a lot of guys end up undersized, right? Is because they're lifting probably too heavy, too young, and then they're also taking shit they're not technically
yeah,
supposed
the
to be
time to grow.
taking.
Yeah,
And that's a problem in sports anyway, is you don't have people like me. Obviously, I'm fortunate that I've filled out, right? I'm a full 6'3". I was a two
yeah,
naturally, like coming out of high school. If I had to call my natural body weight is probably 225, right? Like that's a pretty healthy sized human being, right? Lots
yeah,
of kids don't fill out like that. They don't they go from undersized to pot belly too quick. There's because they go from way overactive to way underactive. There's no kind of
yeah,
shift there, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I feel like, and this kind of ties into talking about football forever. Um, I kind of notice there's a lot of coaches that have like a shitty attitude about what is happening, about social media, about NIL, for example, is like a big deal right now.
yeah,
Um, the best, and all I can say about that is the best athletes that I played with when I was growing up didn't get to play a lot because of money. And a lot of kids that, you never know what really would have happened had they
yeah.
kind of
What
kept
if?
their head in it. But a lot of the reason that their head out of it, right, is because they couldn't do the AAU stuff. They couldn't go travel and play baseball or whatever. And once you kind of that you have some kind of thing limiting you, kids just tend to kind of give up and go try to find something where they don't have those sorts of limitations. Kids that don't play well with others tend to go wrestle, right? Because first of all, if you're like a bully and you can't handle playing with others, wrestling's perfect because there's no such thing as bullies,
Yeah,
right? Like, nope,
yeah, yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
they'll
Not
just
too much.
pile on you. What are you talking about, right? Like, um, but yeah, fortunately, I feel pretty clear-headed about it, right? Like, I figure I think I need to leave the job before I actually talk about who I had a conversation with. But long story short, I've talked to this person several times, but I talked to a coach who in the United States would be considered like a legendary high school coach. Coached multiple back-to-back state champions in basketball in high school, coached multiple sports at the high school level and won multiple state championships in multiple sports out of Gary, Indiana in the 70s. So there's only like a handful of people that could be. But basically, I have him as a client, and we were kind of talking about where he's at, and he's in a nursing home in a bed,
Yeah,
and he's I want to say he's 80s in a nursing home
yeah. So yeah,
with hundreds of people. There's like 600 people here. Um, the only people who are able to leave the facility that have the means to do that are people that have pensions, like the people that actually get more than Social Security. Otherwise, you're just surrendering your Social Security. They feed you and give you meds, and that's how much it costs to
yeah.
stay
That's
here.
it. Yeah,
So that kind of caught me where he talked about how people put money into their retirement, but they don't put enough and they don't stay with the same job long enough so that when they retire, they don't have anything. And they come to places like this and they can barely afford to move. Well, his thing is he can't move. He's basically bound to a bed, and it's a horrible way to die, right?
yeah,
Can't walk
yeah.
anymore.
Certainly.
He's just that old. And while I've been talking to this man. And think about this is like, shit. I'm talking to this man on the phone about his health care, and 2 students dropped by from like 30 years ago that, man, we're just in the neighborhood. Figure we give you, stop in and check on you, he's, you can't really see him because COVID, right?
Yeah.
So he's fist bumping them. Everybody's wearing masks, tears in her eyes, hey, it's good to see you, appreciate you, come see me, whatever. And he says, what's funny about that is that my wife died the last year I taught, and that was the last class I taught. And so I haven't had anyone that's a family. My wife died 30 years ago. Haven't had anyone that's come see me in this nursing home since I've been here, except
Yeah.
students that I taught. And I thought, like, fuck, like I don't have kids. Coaching, I think, if you just coach, I think you're gonna dawdle, right? I think if I just get into coaching, I think I'll probably just end up coaching, being in like an assistant, not ever really getting to
Yeah. Yeah.
fully implement sort of like the kind of things that I know that you wouldn't really do that if it wasn't your team. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
which I get, it makes you sound fucking crazy, but basically what I'm kind of hoping is for an opportunity to come in and say, like we should be playing multiple sports, right? When I was coming up, they told you to don't not to do that. And if you're a football player, be a football player. If you're a basketball player, be a basketball player. If you're a wrestler, be a wrestler, right? Um, and now we're finding out, in hindsight, that the more sports you play, the more likely you are to become a professional at one. Um, the people that specialize in sports are even less likely to become a professional in that
Yeah.
sport, which is crazy. I never thought that. Like that's crazy. If you want something bad enough, you will not get it. That's basically what the data says. That's not to tell you not to chase your dreams. That's just talking about being realistic. But yeah, I also want to make sure that we're saying that kind of stuff on our podcast. Like, hey, if you've got kids, you got young kids, they're thinking about getting into sports. I don't care what they play. I honestly don't. Anything has a functional, it's additive. It's going to make you better. And then obviously, if they get into a position where they're ever going to play football, God forbid, they decide to play football. If they're conditioned and they're a good enough athlete, they'll have less mobility issues. They'll be more of a fluid athlete. Things will come more naturally to them. And I always used to joke, you play baseball I feel at full, everybody moves at full speed. That's like involved with the play. It's not that way in football. In basketball, almost everybody's moving at full speed all the time. And it's like full contact, no pads. But there's just nothing like football, because there's a double digit number of people on both sides on the field at the same time. It's like a super interesting game to play in person. So I encourage you, despite, one of the things that has always bothered me is people poo-pooing football and saying like, don't play football. Where you can like be a fan of it and you can bet on it and you can talk about it and you can, you know what I mean? But you can't tell people to play it. Obviously be fucking careful, right? But like, I'm 38 years old, I'm a disabled veteran, and I'm out there playing fucking battered football, you know? I think you can do it as long as you understand as long as the other people aren't trying to hurt you, right? And everybody's kind of doing the right thing, which at a semi-pro level is passable. That's an expectation that everybody's kind of understands a code. If you watch the offensive linemen, they're only really active for like a second, right?
Yeah.
And then they're real quick to give up on a play because they don't want to get hurt. They'd rather just come back and fight another day. But it's taught me a unique perspective that when you look at the NFL now, to get back to the Colts and kind of tie it all back around, one of the things that I'll appreciate about this draft class is about how they had holes to fill. They identified them and they got exactly what they wanted at those positions, and even got a couple prospects at tight end. And I thought that was the Ogletree pick really kind of was like, like, okay, exactly what we kind of had seen is they really needed to double down at wide receiver, tight end, any of those positions.
Yeah, you need
Give
weapons.
them
Yeah.
give themselves an injection of talent. And we kind of went over that the last time, so I don't want to get too far into that, but that's what I got going on. What do you got going on over there? You're always producing content. What's come across your desk lately?
Well, what I was first of all, I did like a recap of the draft where I was like, I really like the first four picks. You
Yeah.
know, Pierce, Woods, Rainman, and Cross.
Mm-hmm.
The Ogletree pick, I didn't get it much. You know, I was like, and the late round picks, I was like, who are these guys? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea who Ogletree was. I had no idea, you know, like the one I really like is the Curtis Brooks, the defensive tackle out of Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
I was honestly surprised to see him fall that much because he was really solid in the playoffs. He was productive. He's a bit undersized for the position, but that's not like a problem if you're playing him purely on passing down. So that's a good pick there. And what I really like about this draft is the undrafted players they managed to get. The ones I really like were Jojo Doman. He's like this guy out of Nebraska, I believe, that he can play linebacker, he can play safety, he can play nickel cornerback. He was
Mm-hmm.
really solid in coverage. He's a good tackler. So that's the guy where I'm
And
thinking
he was
like,
a UDFA.
wait,
He was undrafted.
yeah, he wasn't
Huh.
drafted, and I had like a fourth round grade on him. I was thinking like, okay, if the Colts use pick number 122 on him, I'd be happy. And then they managed to get him as an undrafted free agent. The problem with him is that he's 25 years old and he already tore his ACL twice. So yeah, that's where you're saying, okay, I can see why he went undrafted. And then there's the safety, you know, Sterling Weatherford out of Florida, or was it, I believe it was Miami, and he's like a really solid safety. And these are all guys that can contribute right away on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
These late round and drafted free agent guys. So I'm like, there was this guy at like this defensive tackle out of Missouri State, I believe, that blocked something like 6 field goals throughout his college career. You're like,
Huh.
okay, these are players that can come in and contribute right away. And so taking into account that we did not have a first round pick and that we did not have like that much draft capital in the first place.
Yeah.
I really liked, you know, the way that the draft unfolded.
Yeah, like I said, when we were watching I was watching the latest from the Colts. They're with the next pick, as I think what they've called this series,
Yeah.
and they were the day of the draft. I want to make sure this is something we bring stuff like this up. So when they go to pick at 42, first of all, they were looking. Was it 42? Yeah, they were looking for a
Yeah.
suitor.
Yeah. The
So
first pick was at
they were
42.
shopping. They were shopping the pick, and they have Pierce and Woods on their radar right there at that pick.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we could pick either one. And Frank Reich says, what do we got to do to get both? And then they traded back. And then they got both guys. And you're like, what are the odds? Like they're totally playing these people if they're right. If they're right about those players, where, hey, if we were thinking about them at 42, wondering we could take either one of these guys and be correct, but let's shop it, see if we can get an extra pick out of it.
Yeah,
and they
the
do that,
guys.
and they get those two guys right away. And then, like I said, the big thing that for me out of this class that I hope I'm right was the Nick Cross pick.
Yeah.
When they traded back in to they traded back into the third round to take him.
Back out of the third round, with I believe it was with the Vikings again.
Yeah.
Can't remember correctly, but traded back into the back of the third round.
Yeah, so I think I said that the last time is the last time they traded up was to take Jonathan Taylor, and the way they're talking about this Nick Cross is that this is a plug and play player. Like we're just going, he's going to play. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay. Like they knew that trading up to get him, this kid's going to play for us. He's going to, you know what I mean? He's going to play safety for it, like actually play for us. And then being confident about him coming in right away. Because if you take away the Nick Cross pick, and you have to think that the Colts didn't have a complete draft because they didn't address the obvious problem on the back end.
Yeah.
So trading back in and getting Nick Cross and then being that confident about that pick, about trading up, giving away next year's assets to go get that, and you're like, huh, that's a pretty complete day too. And okay, like we're done shopping. And then obviously once I processed that day two haul, it made understanding how I hate to be that way because I'm probably wrong. There a fourth round draft pick.
Oh no, we didn't. I don't believe we had like a 4th round pick.
No, I'm
like
saying like a 4th through 7th round pick. I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, but a 4th through 7th round pick and a UDFA. These are all kind of the same, right?
yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Like Colts didn't have a 4th round pick. No, I get that. But like you had a 4th round grade on a guy Colts got as UDFA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
That's what I'm
Joe
saying.
Doman.
I was trying to think. Chris Ballard said there was something like 40 players left outside of the draft. Or no, it's 50 players. There were 50 players left after the draft was over that they considered draftable. And we got to get in touch with all those guys and see how many we could bring in.
Yeah.
That's first of all, that makes me feel good. That's a whole extra team of people that you
Yeah,
had
basically. And
eyeballs on outside of what you got, right? And there will be guys that they drafted and got signed as UDFAs that don't make the roster, and guys will get hurt and all that. But man, it feels good to be a fan of a competent organization that directly addresses its needs without overcompensating to do so in a market where that's what regularly happens.
Yeah.
People are kind of dumb, and it makes you feel good about paying attention in school where you're like, hey, and they have cap space left to like pay someone if they end up signing someone. Smart draft, good looking roster. Hopefully they get the better part of the next few years out of Matt Ryan, and it's not a total decline
Hopefully it's
from him.
like 2 to 3
I hope,
seasons perhaps. Yeah.
yeah, I'm hoping it's 3 seasons is my hope, is you get 3 seasons of premier quarterback play. Because again, and I can say it now, having gone out and done it, if you're not handing the ball off, you just got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Facts. Like, you better know where you're going with it before you snap it. And if you ain't handing that motherfucker off, you better get it out of your hand, because you're going to get lit up like a Christmas tree. It's not even funny anymore. You're going to get killed. So that's the problem with Carson Wentz, is he was just athletic enough to dodge the first guy, right?
But yeah.
And I've thought about it a lot now that I'm kind of playing, right? And keep in mind, I was the guy coming into the organization saying you have to protect the quarterback, right? Like, I'm coming to them saying, hey, you got to protect your QB. You can't be hitting them in practice, right? And here I am, right? A week before the season starts, healthy. Now, I'm not the starter. I can tell you that. Especially I went at the last 2 practices. I couldn't make it, right? I fully expect to play. I have no doubt, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, watching film with me and give me a little bit of confidence, because when you're going through it, right, driving out there, playing, and then coming back home and then watching yourself, and
Yeah.
it's that situation is not improving on its own, right? It's easy to get discouraged, but if nothing else, thank you for humoring me and saying like,
Nice.
hey man, you look pretty competent here. You look like you probably all right. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
It feels good to at least have someone else say, hey, I could see a base level of competency out of you. It makes me feel like it wasn't a total waste of my time. But yeah, like I said, in a strange turn of events, right, where I was doing this as a favor to the organization as a coach, right? Like, hey, in a lot of spots, you're going to end up without a backup. Here, let me lose some weight and come back. I'll play, right? I thought they had 4 quarterbacks and that I wasn't needed, basically, for like the last 3 weeks. And then now it's kind of like, well,
Yeah, you might be.
you sooner or later, man. And like, oh hell. I kind of I hope they'd make it a month, you know what I mean? With somebody having to, hey man, are you gonna come be part of this? Like we're probably gonna need you. And you're like, shit. All right, yep. I guess I'll get on the treadmill. Now now I'm
Yeah.
start actually like go to the next phase of workout is what I mean. Like where you're actually trying to like in season stay in shape because you gotta keep your legs fresh. That's the only thing I know is when I first started working out, I wasn't working out frequently enough outside of like planned workouts with the team, and I kept having small tissue injuries. And the only way to get past that was work out more frequently, right? That way you're getting up every day. And so now I'm nowhere near like a pro athlete. They got to do a lot more work than I do. They have to be doing it because they're moving so much better at my age than I am, right? So that's something I'll always keep I have a unique. I think I have a little more of a unique perspective on in that preparation level. Is I know I'm working as hard as I can, right? And I mean I'm
Yeah.
still 20 pounds overweight and all that, you know what I mean? But um, I feel for these guys giving up their summers to prepare to do it. And I get it; they get paid a lot of money, and it's largely
Yeah.
entertainment and shit, whatever. But um, it's crazy to like be seeking self improvement. It's a physical task, and the danger is you hurting yourself. Right? That's such a wild thing. I'm not explicitly doing anything dangerous. I'm not jumping off shit. Right? But you know, just stretching, you pull a muscle. It just that's just the way it
Yeah, it
is.
can happen.
Yeah, so it make me feel a little more empathy for a guy like Paris Campbell, and be a little more happy for him when he shines, right? Like he's kind of been through it. It's tough. Keep your head in it, right? Especially as a class athlete and a track athlete, right? Man, I'll
Yeah.
be happy for him when he comes and contributes and it's consistent, you know, and you see him week in and week out, and he's not on a crutches and he's not in street
Yeah.
clothes, you know. And I'd like to see him play a full year, and I think he'd bring a dynamic to Colts offense on his own that would lift anyone. So and you have that, and then you have other added weapons, right? And oh, by the way, the Colts still have young Jonathan Taylor, who this episode is kind of named
Dedicated
after,
to,
that
yeah.
you can absolutely run your offense through him. Um, yeah, damn, it feels good to be a Colts fan, huh?
Yeah, right now it does.
It feels good right now when everybody's healthy and interested in football, right?
It's probably going to be like a bounce back year for us.
Yeah, I think so. If I remember correctly, I read a betting article that says the most teams are plus or minus 2 year to year, right? You're gonna win 2 more games, lose 2 more games. So it's a either or, not both.
Yeah.
So the thought process there would be an 11-6 Colts team is realistic based on that model. However, the range, when I looked to go see like what is the range from like a good team to take the next step, the range is more like 2 to 4 wins. So I'm not saying like I'll be shitty if the Colts are 11-6 and make the playoffs. No, man. If they win the division, no, man. I don't care what the record is. I'm just saying like when I was looking at the improvement year to year, what was more likely was more like 3 or 4 wins. The norm, sure, too. But what was more likely to happen? A bigger improvement. And I agree with you. I agree with you. There's something about um, a heady quarterback, having a heady quarterback, a smart guy
Yeah.
at QB, a Boston College kid, no less, that I think will show you. Because one of the things I'll always think about last year is why didn't they use Naheem Hines? And I think one of the things that we'll hang our hat on this year is their use of Naheem Hines. So, right, like where it's such a stark flip of his sort of importance in your offense, where I just think he was kind of missed last year. I want to say his head was out of it last year. But then again,
Yeah.
there is that clip of him doing the interview about returning kicks and about how your life flashes before your eyes and you kind of got to throw caution to the wind. And I was kind of like, maybe he needs to see a mental health expert. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want my kick return to talk like that. But yeah, man, here we are, the first week of May. I appreciate, as usual, you sitting down with me, and
Yeah,
it's
of course.
I think we bring a unique perspective, right? One half of this podcast is in Argentina, the other in
Yeah.
Indianapolis, Indiana. Both huge Colts fans. Obviously, we have Stampede Blue to thank because that's how we met.
Yeah.
But man, it's been good. It's been awesome to get to know